All right, I got 7 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Before we get started, I just want to talk about a couple of ground rules. First, please silence your cell phones and try to eliminate any background noise. Greg does have the ability to mute you if you are creating too much noise. You'll have to unmute yourself if that happens. There'll be a time for questions and comments for each project after the Planning Commission reviews. So please use the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen or email Greg. Please don't just jump in and start talking. State your name and address for the record, and your comment time is limited to 2.5 minutes. And there will also be a time for public comment at the end of the meeting. So that being said, first thing I want to do is get a roll call. We'll start with Planning Commission members. I do know that Alex Ulmer is not present. Tim Ruth, you're here.
Here.
Andy.
Here.
John.
Here.
And alternate Tony.
Here.
All right, thanks, guys. We have David Collingwood, Supervisor David Collingwood. I don't think we have any other supervisors on.
Here.
All right, so who do we have for Green Top representation?
Hello, Brandon Bialik with the Crossroads Group, and also Steve Lampman from Salapio Homes is also on the call as well.
Okay, thank you. And how about Moser?
Ed Moser is here.
You have any engineering with you?
Rachel Bush, I'm here too.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And how about the Durstein Foods?
Zach Durstein here, and I think my attorney, Mike Malloy, joined the call as well.
Okay. And am I correct that Varus removed themselves from the agenda?
Can you hear me?
Correct.
Sorry.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, they emailed us and said they would not attend.
Okay, I'm getting some feedback. Let me hang on 1 second. I got something going on here.
I'm muting people. People
Oh.
are leaving their mics on and they're getting muted.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from June 14th. Does anybody have any corrections or concerns? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
I actually saw one thing, Chris. It said about the question with regard to the traffic study for Grandview Hospital was brought up by Alex. I think it was me that brought that up, but it's fine. It mentions that it was brought up, but
Yeah, I don't remember who brought it up, to be honest with you.
it's not a big deal. It's fine. But that was the only thing I saw. Otherwise, they're fine.
Any others? All right, so we can either amend that or let it slide and get a motion to approve.
I'll let it slide and get a motion to make the motion to approve.
This is Andy. I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to go into the Green Top Road subdivision. I'm going to disclose once again that I have done business with Salapio Homes, so I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion. Alex would be next in command, and he is not here. So Tim Ruth, secretary, I'm going to pass the gavel to you.
Okay. All right. So, Brandon, I guess you're going to take this from here.
Yeah, sure. I'll give I know this has been seen before, but I'll give like a brief recap of the plan. Would you like me to pull up a version of it on my screen or?
Sure. I mean, we've all seen it. So, I mean, it's
okay. I mean,
you sort of bring it up, but we have I think the June 16th review letter. Steve, is that?
Yes, we received that. If we'd like to discuss that content, or if there's anything particularly of interest to the Planning Commission.
Well, I think we'll go through the June 16th review letter and just go down through it item by item. If it's a will comply, just, state that, and we'll just keep moving through it. If that's all right. If there's any, need for discussion, we'll bring it up.
Okay. I mean, personally speaking, we've reviewed it and everything in the letter will be a will comply. If you'd like some updates as far as with the Bucks County Conservation District. We've submitted our MPDS permit application. We've got our admin complete letter from them, and we just received this week the technical review letter. There's a few minor comments in there that we'll be addressing over this next month, and getting that back in to get our MPDS permit approval. And we are also working on our sewage planning module with Penns Trail Environmental. So I know those are two pretty large items that are in progress. So,
Okay.
but everything else in the letter will comply.
Okay, Steve, was there anything that you wanted to touch on?
I'll just point out a few items for just so everybody is clear on what we had done in the past and what they're still showing. So if you recall with the preliminary plan approval, we had agreed to the road widening, the stabilized grass shoulder, and a 4-foot wide paved trail along the frontage of the property. That was my first comment. They do show that on the plan. I just have some engineering comments about the actual details of construction, but they're proposing it exactly the way that we had discussed it now. Waiver requests were all granted during the preliminary plan. The only issue open is contribution in lieu of some of the improvements.
I had one question on item 4 is the typical driveway entrances, the center line detail. I guess 512G in the Saldo section talks about the width of driveway pipes. And I think that's something that came up in another development at the Kratz property, that the pipes weren't supposed to be 5 foot past the paved portion of the driveway.
Right. I believe that we had that comment in previously, and I believe they have adjusted the driveways to meet our ordinance standard, and the fire company had a chance to look at it also.
Yeah, because I know it's created a lot of problems over the Kratz development. There's been, I can't tell you how many trucks, Amazon trucks, that have been stuck because they had culvert boxes there and they were the width of the driveway. So it's like every other day there was an Amazon truck stuck in one of the driveways. So okay, just so we're going to make, it's going to be the 5 foot past the paved portion of the driveway on each side.
It's going to be per the ordinance, yes.
Okay.
I believe we're past five foot on either side of the driveway currently, just looking at the plan. I know it's a little hard to see on that sheet there, but
Yeah, it is a little tough. So I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at that. But that was the only question that I had. So.
Yeah, so and as Brandon mentioned, the sewage facilities, the planning module, that's probably the single biggest item that's outstanding, but is in progress with their consultant. Otherwise, everything was pretty cleaned up with they did all the other outstanding items from the preliminary plan approval. It was pretty clean. There's a couple engineering drafting comments that are attached, but there are nothing that we need to look at.
Okay. So at this point, then, we're looking for final then?
yeah, we would be looking for your recommendation for conditional final approval.
Okay, is there planning commission members, any other comments, questions from anyone?
See, John, I don't have any other questions.
This is Andy. No.
Okay, Alex is not here, so that would be the full group. Yeah, I don't have any, so I guess I'd be looking for a motion for final approval.
This is Andy. I'll make a motion for conditional final approval.
This is John. I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, hearing none. It passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck.
Have a good night.
You as well.
Good night, guys.
All right. Are you giving it back to me here, Tim?
Yes, sorry, Chris. Back
No
to you.
worries. Yeah, thanks. All right, so next on the agenda is Moses. We didn't have any comment on that last plan, did we, Greg? Public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that, Greg. Should have asked that. I figured if you did, you'd probably pipe it, but okay.
All right, so Moser would be next. Would one of you like to take control?
Thank you. This is Mike Carr. I'm an attorney with Eastburn and Gray. I represent the developer. With us is Rachel Bush, our engineer, Birch, our engineer. This was before you several times, quite some time ago. It's been a while. 2-lot subdivision of an 8-acre tract. I would ask Rachel to tell you what's changed since the last time we were here. 2 houses proposed, one on a 2.62 lot and one on a 5.39 acre lot.
Hello, I'm Rachel Bush with Showalter, the design engineer. So just to summarize what has changed on the plan since we last submitted, the location of, there's the one lot is significantly bigger than the other. There's 2.5 acres is the one lot and the other one's a little bit over 5. So we position the location of the conservation easement towards the rear of the lots to allow for more usable space in the front. And then we've designed 2 rain gardens, whereas the previous plan had just 1 rain garden. So now we have 2 rain gardens, 1 for each lot individually. There was some discussion previously, and this is one of the main things that has changed on the plan is the discharge location of the of both basins. Primarily the basin towards the south has been shifted farther away, farther downhill towards the rear of the property. And we've addressed some other kind of minor plan changes in Wynn's review letter. That pretty much summarizes the engineering changes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions before we roll through the review letter? All right, hearing none. Would you mind just rolling down the review letter?
That's fine. The first comment is related to the fact that the site was subject to a 2003 zoning hearing board decision. The prior owner went out and cleared the property, planning on putting horses on the property. Zoning enforcement notice was issued, and the zoning decision in 2003 determined that the violation notice was correct and that the property needed to be reforested. There was a reforestation plan implemented. And as of 2010, the township concluded that it had been successfully implemented. But the deer have gotten in there and nature has taken its course. And so the reforestation has been only partially successful. And we are of the opinion and have taken the position that the township signed off on a successful reforestation, and that zoning hearing board determination is no longer of any relevance, and that when we look at site capacity calculations in terms of forest disturbance, we're looking at it under the ordinance, and we're limiting the disturbance to allowable levels under the ordinance on this plan. And it seems to me that the Wynn letter agrees that that's where we are. That is also the subject of the second comment. And I think with respect to the rest of the letter, and Rachel or Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, where it will complies, and the question is whether or not the waiver requests are appropriate and what kind of recommendation you would make to the township with respect to those.
Yeah, before we get to that, in item 2, we've got a rain garden, we've got a sand mound and a reserve septic area in the conservation area. And I think that was something that we had discussion on before that we needed some clarity on whether that was permissible. So I would be looking to see what Steve or Greg have to say about that.
Well, I think we may need to get input from the township solicitor on it. The way the plan has been clarified, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some tree clearing required for the rain garden on the smaller lot, but the septic systems and whatnot don't, in the easement area, don't require any clearing. Is that correct?
That's correct. The rain garden, the larger rain garden, we have relocated so to minimize the amount of tree clearing. So there was a large section of reestablished woodlands where the rain garden had originally been shown, and that's what we've shifted farther back. So there are some trees that need to be cleared, but it's more kind of spotty. It's not a heavily wooded area. And the septic systems, the reserve septic system in the back is what's proposed to be in the conservation easement.
All right, and I think that was a concern last time, that we didn't have clarity of exactly where the current vegetation was and what had to be cleared. But this plan, I think, better identifies that issue. So Chris, that was one item. It was, the concern about the amount of clearing required.
Right.
And would that be contrary to, conserving the area? So it appears that they've at least minimized any clearing that's necessary for those improvements. I know they referenced in the response letter, the township's open space requirements, and that's, I guess, a starting point of what is or isn't permitted in open space areas. I think I referenced that in, towards the end of my comment number 2. That open space, in a development that requires open space, our ordinance allows such uses as agricultural and horticultural operations, excepting commercial livestock. It allows equestrian facilities. It allows for underground drainage and sewer facilities. And that's about the extent of what the open space allows for.
And we're comfortable with limiting the conservation easement area to the uses that Steve just described. So
Is the sand mound for lot 2, is that not in the conservation easement?
that's a Rachel question.
The sand mound for lot 2 is in the rear corner of the lot, and yes, that is in the conservation easement.
Okay, so that and the reserve site.
Correct.
I got you. Okay, thank you. And is there a limited amount of clearing needed for the sand mound?
There are some trees in that area that would need to be cleared. Yeah, it's kind of on the edge of the woodlands there. That's
Right.
the area that they were able to get it to put in the sand mound.
Right. So is having a sand mound in the conservation easement within the ordinance? I guess is my question.
Well, this is where we ended up, our discussions last time. I don't think our ordinance is clear what can or can't be allowed in a conservation easement.
Okay.
We started out with conserving the area based on the natural resource standards, and that conservation is typically intended to protect a resource. So if you're conserving a wooded area, then it's to not remove any more trees in the wooded area. If you're conserving a steep slope, you're protecting that from future disturbance.
And Mary and I have talked about this, and the gist of Mary Everly and what we sort of arrived at was, stormwater, septic, that sort of stuff, equestrian, agricultural. As long as we arrive at the delineation of the woodlands that are to be disturbed or not be disturbed, we're going to make sure there's no structures or intensive use of anything in the conservation or the conserved area.
Okay.
But that's a sand mound is, a pretty stable and non-intense use of that area.
Well, I guess I would defer to the solicitor on clarification there.
And I would encourage you to make a recommendation this evening that does exactly that. Condition it on the solicitor's approval of the location of that sand mound.
Understood.
Now,
Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
is the applicant also willing to, if the solicitor could craft a language to limit removal of additional trees beyond the improvements shown on this plan within the conservation easement area?
We fully intend to do that. Yes.
I think that was important part of the discussion in the past. The concern that we don't end up with a cleared lot again by some future property owner.
Yeah, the basic effort was to try to reforest this, and to the extent that that succeeded or didn't succeed, we're not looking to take out any more of the reforested areas or the originally successfully forested areas than possible. And we've moved things around. We've moved stormwater around. We've moved septic around. We've tried to minimize the disturbance of the forested areas as much as possible. And maybe Ed wants to chip in, but we spent years and many tens of thousands of dollars trying to get this little 2-lot subdivision done in a pretty sensitive manner. I think we'd like to move it on.
Are these homes slated to be built, or are they spec properties?
Ed,
These are slated to be built by us.
Okay. Or as a spec, or do you have buyers?
No, as a spec.
Okay. And I know, one of the questions we had last time was going to be the use in the conserved area. And I think equestrian was one of those uses that we were discussing. So you have no idea what a future buyer is going to want to do with the property.
No, I do not.
But Ed,
They
tell
have to
me,
limit themselves to what we agreed to.
I don't think we're looking for the right to put in a big indoor. We are looking for the right to fences and run-in sheds and that sort of thing.
Okay. And I guess, again, if that's an allowable use in an open space ordinance, is that how I'm hearing that, Steve?
Correct.
Well, I think too, like a big indoor stuff, wouldn't that fall under the commercial livestock designation?
No,
it would also be a structure, so that it's sort of
Right.
taken out with it being a large structure.
Yeah, I mean, I think in open space, sewage is allowed and all that type of thing. I don't see why it wouldn't be in a conservation easement, but yeah, if we condition it with, the solicitor's approval, I'd be comfortable with that.
All right. Any other questions or comments on that topic? All right. Hearing none, why don't we keep rolling through this review letter?
Is my mic on?
Yes.
All right. 3 is a comment, and then we've got waivers. Lot lines substantially at right angles from the street. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. Improvements to the street frontage, including pavement overlay, cartway widening, curb, sidewalk, and drainage facilities. I guess these are maybe supervisor questions, but if you have any input or if you have any comments about the state of the road there and what may or may not need to be done, we're very open to them.
I think Steve had made comment on that. Let's go back to the lot line. It's the first in the letter. We've certainly approved lot lines that were worse than what you have laid out here. So I personally don't have a problem with that waiver.
Yeah, these aren't real strange.
No. Planning commission members have any comment on the lot line waiver?
This is Tim. I don't have any problems with them.
This is Andy. No, and I might mention back in the July 21 minutes, we were fine with it back then. So.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
I don't know, Rachel or Ed, you want to talk about the existing vegetation along the frontage?
So there's some trees that are along the along the frontage of the road. So what needs to come out is to put in so the driveways can be installed. So there's one of the roadway improvements that Steve Falla had put in the last letter was related to widening and kind of defining better the roadside swale along there. So the vegetation that would be removed or affected along the frontage there is going to be related to putting in that swale and putting in the driveways. And I think maybe I'm jumping, but I think there's a comment about street trees and vegetation and there's certainly significant enough vegetation along the frontage, but street trees could be installed if needed if they're damaged during construction.
Yeah, I did include that comment, Chris. Similar to what we've done in some other projects where we kept existing trees, is we had a caveat comment that said if for some reason during construction more trees than we anticipated have to be removed, that they would then infill a standard street tree where necessary.
Okay. Yeah, so if that's somewhere on the plan, I'm fine with that. And Steve, you're comfortable with the swale grading?
Yeah, I think there's a couple engineering comments about it, but the concept we had talked about before, and they showed it that.
Okay.
They included what we had asked for on the plan.
Right. So curbs and sidewalks, not necessary, but there'll be a fee in lieu of.
They would need to prepare an estimate for any improvements they're not installing. Yes.
Right.
And that's acceptable. Now, the swale grading on the Landis property, we have not successfully communicated with Landis. I don't know whether there's any Landis representatives here this evening, but we're not going to be able to work on their property, obviously, if they don't allow us. And so the best we can do is, we're kind of the middle on a slope, and the water comes from up the hill and goes down the hill. Excuse me, I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting. I had someone come to the door. And so whatever is going to be done may need to be done on our property. And Rachel maybe can address what that may be, what that might entail.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I lost you for a minute. Can you say that again, Mike?
We're looking at 6A, which says applicant should provide verification and permission from land to complete swale grading.
So what the current plan is showing is that there's a pipe that directs the swale from the Landis property onto the Moser property. So what we're a solution to kind of redirecting the runoff that's eroding through the Moser property is to eliminate that pipe and to redirect the swale that is, getting runoff from the Landis property and keep it on the Landis property and kind of shift it back towards, there's the swale, and there's an existing swale that goes along the common property line between the Landis and the Moser property. And then there's also a swale along the common property line between the Moser property and the Leedy property. So there are kind of defined swales nicely along the edges of those property lines and in the woodlands. And the idea, ideally is to take that runoff that's coming onto the Moser property and keep it on the Landis property. And a way to do that is to eliminate the pipe that was installed.
And is the pipe on the Moser property or the Landis property?
It splits. It's kind of on both.
So we could just cut it off at the edge of the property line, but that's probably not the best option.
We could do that, but it would probably, you need to find the spot where the swale will, where you can get positive drainage. So you can't just cut the pipe and leave it. We have to do a little bit of work to make it function properly.
But we could do that on our property.
We could do that on our property with a little bit of, with a little bit more grading downstream, yeah.
Right.
So you haven't been back with Landis?
I think the swale along the Landis property line is on the Landis side of the property line, at least up in the area of the pipe. And that was part of the problem of, getting him to acknowledge that work needed to be done.
All right. Well, I don't know what the planning commission can do about that. But if you can get it figured out with Landis and you have it calculated that it's going to work, then more power to you.
Well, and it sounds like we're able to address it to Steve's satisfaction one way or another.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you just might have to do some more grading on your own property.
Right.
You can't get resolution from Landis.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Number 7 talks about outside permits. That's a will comply. 8 is will comply. We had on-site systems approved. Those approvals ran out. We have to redo them.
Hey, Mike, can I back you up a second?
Yeah.
The swale on the south side of the property, on the Leidy side of the property, are the Leidies satisfied with what you're doing there? Have you had discussion with them, or?
Ed, have you talked to them? They should be. We've really gone out of our way to try to address any issues in terms of redirecting water away from their buildings and their homes.
Yeah, I think Rachel addressed all the comments from the engineer that they had at the last meeting.
What we did is we shifted the discharge a little bit farther downstream, and then we also changed it to a level spreader, which just kind of just disperses the water a little bit more. That's something that we had talked about with the Leedies and with their engineer previously.
Okay, and you're satisfied with that?
It's my understanding that they're satisfied with that, yeah.
Okay.
Good. Chris, I believe the township might have received some written comments today. So after we go through these, I think we could address those, or there may be comments from Leidy.
Okay. All right.
9, 10 are will complies. 11 is the dedication of rec land or fee in lieu. We understand that. Street lighting, I don't think anyone is looking for street lighting, perhaps a fee in lieu. But we're
You're proposing driveway lamp posts, correct?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Monumentations will comply. Financial security agreements will comply. And then 15 are a bunch of detailed review comments that are all will comply. I believe, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, they're all will comply.
And that gets us to the end of it.
All right. So what are you looking for tonight?
I would love conditional preliminary / final, if you even do that with a minor, perhaps final.
And what do we have outstanding, Steve?
Well, obviously the conservation easement, with the final language of the conservation easement is, but that's probably, it may be a matter beyond the planning commission.
And I think Mary and I are on exactly the same page
Okay.
in terms of what's needed there.
You know, a final decision on the waiver request. How we discussed the possibility for Landis, if they can't fix it on the Landis property, that they would have to do it conversely on the Moser property. The sewage planning modules have to be approved, and the rest are pretty much minor issues. So the, you know, stormwater and the conservation easement, that's what we, you know, sort of the two big items that we've come back to.
Right. Well, why don't we,
I think we have more clarity than we had before on those.
right. Why don't we take care of the waiver request now? I don't have a problem with any of them. If anybody does speak up or make a motion to approve or recommend the waiver request.
This is Tim. I'll make said motion to approve it's the lot lines and the street frontage improvements, right?
Subject to a contribution.
Subject to fee and lieu. I'll make said motion.
John, I'll second it.
John, second it?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you get your waivers. So these other items, I mean, are these things that we can somehow make a motion to
What about the comments, Chris? Want to hear the comments?
public comment?
I know Darlene Lighty would like to have public comment.
All right, why don't we do that?
You said there was some written stuff to it?
Yes, that's right, yeah. All right, why don't we hear that now? So, do we have written comments and some?
Well, Darlene Lighty had written comments, which I forwarded on to Steve, and I also know she wants to give public comments. I know John Romeo wants to give public comment too.
Okay.
Darlene, do you want your comments read before you make public comment, or you want to give public comment first?
I would just like to give a public comment because some of the written comments have already been addressed.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, regarding the
You need
Landis.
your name and address before you begin.
Okay. Darlene Lighty, 218 Augustine Road, Sellersville. Several questions. First of all, I'd like to make the comment that I know Scott Landis and his wife are very busy right now caring for sick family members. That may be why you haven't been able to contact them. Regarding our questions, some of them have already been answered. Question one I have, is there's some concern among the neighbors here on the location of the driveway on lot 2. If you drive down Augustine Road, you'll notice visibility on the curb is limited. Are there plans for a clear sight triangle? Another question I had was regarding the tree removals. Just, you know, trying to save as many trees as we can due to the reforestation of this lot. And I think that's being addressed. Next question was regarding the proposed drip micro mound sewage. Just wondering who checks to make sure that's installed correctly and operating correctly going forward. And the big question was the Landis swale, which we discussed. Oh, I know one of the others, it was mentioned about the removal of the 6-foot-high fencing area. And I was also wondering about the black skirting that's been around the property for probably 18 years now. Part of it's still laying down, if that's also being addressed to be removed. And as far as I know, no one has ever contacted us about the pipe at the back of the field. we're concerned there because it is a hay field. We do have tractors going in there, and it has eroded over the years, making it a little unsafe for the tractor. So we do want to make sure that that is addressed very well. And I think the last thing I have is one of these letters with comment, 15C. It says proposed improvements appear to be shown extending outside of legal right-of-way on Leidy property. What does that mean?
Okay, Chris, if you'd like, I could kind of tick down through some of these and
Oh, I have one last thing. Also, the size of the lot 2, if it's going to be used for equestrians, how many horses would be permitted on that lot?
All right. Yeah, Steve, if you want to chip away at the questions.
let me try to chip at these. So as Ms. Leidy said, we did talk about the conservation easement already. So we know that we need some, the solicitor to finalize that. The issue with the driveway location, I believe there's site distance information shown on the plan. Yeah, now I'm looking at, there is. So we do have site triangles shown on the plan, but I have no problem to double checking that issue. If there's some vegetation issue, I'll certainly look at that again before the supervisors look at this plan. The tree removal, we had talked about preserving the trees, particularly within the conservation easement area. The drip micro mound, that will be permitted and inspected by the Bucks County Health Department. But because of that type of system, it's referred to as an alternate system. So it's not a sand mound is considered a standard system. They will also have an operation agreement with the township, which requires them to hire a contractor to do annual maintenance on the system. So it's basically controlled by the Bucks County Health Department, but we also will have an agreement to make sure that they do annual maintenance on the system. Talked about the drainage. So as indicated, that rain garden was pushed further to the rear, and Rachel Butch indicated earlier, it has a level spreader discharge instead of just a pipe coming out. So what it means, it goes into a stone trench to try and spread out the flow so it doesn't just erode a channel. I don't know what the actual discharge flow rate is off the top of my head. I know it's substantially reduced, and maybe Rachel could give us an answer after I'm done here, how much reduction there was in the stormwater there. There is a note on the plan saying that they'll remove all that old black silt fence. So
Good.
After everything is built and constructed, that will be, well, first they have to replace it with new silt fence or silt sock they use now, and ultimately it will be removed. You didn't mention it, but it was in your written comments. Who's responsible to make sure construction is complete per the plan? That's the township and our office specifically. We do inspect the driveway entrances, the stormwater work, and we get grading. We get what we call an as-built plan when the lot is ready to be sold or occupied, so we could compare what they built to what the original plan was. I think you asked another question and I don't remember. Oh, the number of horses. I don't know that off the top. Greg, do you know what that is?
It is a minimum of 3 acres of pasture land, and then they can have 1 head per acre of pasture land.
So technically the smaller lot can't have any horses because of the lot size. Would that be right, Greg?
They would, yeah, you need 3 acres of pasture land, and then it's 1 head per acre. So if they have 3 acres, they could have 3 horses.
And we do appreciate the changes that they made to this plan. We really do appreciate the rain garden, the location and the size and everything else. So thank you for making changes and listening to our concerns.
Thank you for that. We appreciate that.
Steve, there was a question on 15C with the proposed improvements outside of legal right away on Light Oak.
Oh, that's the last one I couldn't remember. Yeah, they're regrading the swale in front of the Moser property, and then they have to transition that back to the swale that's in front of your property. And I just think the way they connected the lines, it goes a little outside of the right of way. So I want them to clean that up so it's clear that they're not going to do any work on your property except blending the swale back into the existing swale.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We had someone else, Greg?
Yeah, I didn't, John Romeo. I didn't know if he wanted to speak.
Johnny, you on? Okay. Is it a written?
Yeah, there was a couple written emails. Hold on, let me pull them up. I'm not sure. What are they doing for sewage? Past perk test for 212 Augustine. Rain gardens draining my way. A rain garden in a wooded area will kill existing trees. Too much water for trees. One home, much more suitable for a lot. They couldn't put a sand mound any closer to my property, and the stormwater needs to be contained and not discharged towards us. Those were the emails I received.
Okay. All right. So moving forward, are we considering a conditional preliminary final? Pending Mary's interpretation of the use on the conservation area. What other outstanding do we have?
I think you can make it conditioned on Mary's approval of the conservation easement agreement. Mary and I have talked enough that I'm comfortable with that.
And we're still waiting on sewage plan modules. And that was,
That's right.
Yes.
We are.
that was the only outstanding items.
Those are the two main outstanding items. There's all the other engineering and miscellaneous items in the letter.
All right.
This is Andy. Did we also talk about putting language in that letter regarding tree removal for Mary?
Tree removal outside of what needs to be done for the septic and rain garden areas?
No, we're not looking to remove trees. Like, those trees will be conserved in accordance with the plan.
Okay.
It was just a note that I had when we were talking about crafting that letter. So
Right. Does someone want to craft a motion?
this is Andy. I'll make a motion to recommend conditional preliminary final approval of the plan contingent upon successfully crafting a letter with the solicitor's approval regarding approved use within a conservation easement. How's that?
Well said.
Lovely.
And the remaining items of my July 6th letter.
And the remaining items in Steve's June 6th letter.
And throw in recommend the grant of waivers as requested.
Did we make a motion? Didn't we make
Yeah,
a
you
motion?
voted on
You already
that.
did that.
We
Already.
already approved the waivers.
Sorry.
No worries. All right. So sounds like we have a legitimate motion, and we got a second on it.
This is John.
This
I'll
is
second.
Ted. Go ahead, John. John got it.
All right.
I'll
John
second
got it. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Good luck getting everything together.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you.
I see Cliff has raised his hand. How do we get Cliff on board?
Sorry, but thank you. I'm sorry, I'm slow on the buttons. I would just like to make a comment that this is, in my opinion, I'm usually somewhat negative, but this is the way that this committee ought to be working. I mean, this is a success where it seems like there were some issues and they were addressed by the owners or whoever's doing this. And this is a very palatable type thing in retrospect in comparison to the warehouse type of things that we've been having to deal with. So just a general comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I commend the applicant for making all the effort to make this work, for making it palatable for the neighbors. Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Good luck.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Moving forward, we have Durstein Foods. Zach.
Good evening. Hi, it's Mike Malloy from Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, Hipple. And I just wanted to take a second. Thank you very much. I am here for Benai LLC and the Dursteins. Thank you. And I just wanted to take a second, and we have quite a few people here because we understand the scope and the size of this project. It's going to have a lot of questions. We are here because we've filed for a single variance for what you're going to hear is a proposed at its full build out will be approximately a 300,000 square foot cold storage warehouse facility. The Dursteins, as you know, have been in the township for 39 years and would like to continue operations and expand operations, stay within the township and occupy this property. And I see that Greg's put a picture of the proposed facility, and we're going to explain to you, I know it sounds like a tall building, and it is. We're not hiding from that tonight. And our hope is that we're going to explain the cold storage business to you and why that kind of height is now standard in that industry. And Zach will walk you through it, and I'll introduce the rest of the team. We have Zach Durstein, and Zach will go first, and I'll let him turn over the presentation to him after I'm done. We have Eric Mounts from Traffic Planning and Design. From Bowler Engineering, we have Mike Jeitner. He is on the line. And then two folks from ESI, which is our architect. They developed the plan that you're seeing in front of you, the proposed renderings, and they're going to talk about what goes on inside the building as far as the mechanical, automated technology that is driving the height of the building. And they're going to explain how that operates. And so, I think it's probably a little unusual. I'm sorry, and it's Mark Livesey and Donald Olson are here from ESI. And I guess I'm a little, I don't think it's typical maybe, or maybe in this township it is typical that we would go before you for a variance. So I'm not exactly, I'm hoping that this is the first of many times that you see this project as we, hopefully get the variance and then begin taking it through land development. So I guess we could focus on the variance and the height, but it's really, I think, a broader introduction for you to the project. The need for the variance and why will come out in the presentation. And I guess I'm saying all this because I'm not sure that we're actually asking for anything from the Planning Commission at this point, and Greg can correct me if I'm wrong, if we're, and certainly that we hope you don't oppose, the variance and let us continue on and prove our case. So with that, I'll turn it over to Zach, and he can introduce himself in a little more detail on his business, his family, operations, and why he wants to stay here. So, Zach, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for putting on the agenda tonight to talk with you about this. Recognize a lot of the names on the call. I'm sure you have seen Durstine if you've driven past State Road. We've been here since 1995, and we're able to do 3 phases on the building here on State Road for our wholesale food service distribution business. In 2007, we started another business for public refrigerated cold storage. And in March of 2020, we lost every customer one day. And on that day, I said to myself, if we can get through this, if we can stay in business, if our family can do this after 30, I think it was 37 years at that point in time, or 39 years now have been in business, we're gonna have to find a way to diversify. So our goal and our intention is to continue with the food service business in Sellersville, and then have a new location just for our cold storage business to try to diversify a little bit with what we do. Cold storage business is a little different than wholesale distribution in that in order to be competitive, it's a lot like a hotel. Think about a hotel. We need everything that we do is based on pallet positions when we store frozen food. And in order to be competitive in that industry, we have to have height as opposed to width. So if we can go taller, we can be more competitive. In addition to that, the freezers are 0 degrees Fahrenheit down to 20 below Fahrenheit, -20. And the ideal solution to be competitive in the industry is to have automation, robotics. It's really a crane system or a shuttle system that would operate inside of the tall section you see there on the screen. That wouldn't require many people in the storage portion other than maintenance people. But that would be really tightly configured storage with little wasted space, ceiling to floor. So to be competitive in the cold storage, you have to be in this height range. So when we found this piece of real estate, we thought it could work because it's close to our existing facility, close to where I live. It's close to the 309. It's zone industrial. It had a lot of positive attributes. And the outstanding question is if we can make it work with the height variance. What did I miss, Mike? Oh boy.
So Zach, you hold on one second. Sorry, Zach. So you mentioned, I think you said something about pallet positions. I don't understand that. Can you explain what that means? And I understand, you know, explain in a little more detail why, if you know, what about the height exactly makes you competitive, and explain the pallet position, you know, idea to us, concept to us.
Well, the pallet position is it's simple. If you think about a tractor trailer backing up to a dock, they're going to have maybe 26 pallets on every tractor trailer, and those pallets will have food on, stacked probably 6 feet tall. So once those pallets go up the truck, they have to go into storage. If it's French toast or French fries or ham or what have you, we're storing food on a 48 by 40 wooden pallet. We also call them skids. And the automation lends itself to working on a high vertical solution. The automation is not, it doesn't work. The solutions don't work to go wide and low. They work to go high and tall in order to manage the inventory. When you're building freezer space, when you're maintaining the cold air, it's all about height as opposed to width because of the way buildings are designed.
And so, what do you say? I mean, it's almost like the technology is driving the design, right? This is not just a preference for you. This is the way your business operates and works these days, right?
Yeah, that is correct. It would be convenient to go ahead and hit the mute. Thank you, Mike. It would be convenient to go lower. It'd be a little more simple, but yeah, the solution, if you want to be in the cold storage business, it's pretty hard to find people that want to work in 0 degrees. And it's not convenient. I worked in the freezer my whole life. It's a little cold in there. So yeah, to have people do this work.
And you're
they have
still-
to have the solution
you're still-
automated.
Sorry, so speaking of employees though, this is not a workerless facility, right? I mean, this is a manned facility that's going to require jobs and job growth, right?
Yeah, there's still a tremendous quantity of jobs we need to add because there's going to be maintenance and technical and admin and finance and people to load and unload the trucks. All those people are still need people in the dock, etc. Just not the people that go into the freezer.
And how many people overall do you think you're going to hire, new jobs for this facility?
Well, on the picture that's represented there, you can see there's some white and blue. The blue is the full build out. We'd certainly have at least 100 employees in the full build out. For the white portion, we might need, you know, it's kind of a wild guess at this point, depends on how productive everybody is, but we might need 50 people, 35 to 50 people for phase 1. Part of that depends upon what kind of customers we store product for. We worked closely with the USDA through COVID, and the USDA is the one that brought up to me that we could use the extra storage in this part of the country. And with the USDA, there's some importing from the Port of Philadelphia, and when we get those containers in, they're loaded on the floor, so we have to unload those manually. That requires even more people.
So I was going to turn it over to Mike and the architects at this point. Thanks, Zach. But I don't want to, you know, Zach will be here if you have questions. I don't know how you want to run the meeting. I'm happy to have Zach answer questions now or have a dialogue with you if you have anything.
Why don't we do that?
Why don't we do that?
Sure, absolutely. Yep, go for it.
Yeah, so a little bit more about your business. So this is cold storage for, you're basically subbing this area out, or you're storing for
It's not subbed out. It's going to be owner operator. So we do this now in Sellersville, and we'll do, if this would be successful, we'll do more of it in the new facility in addition to what we do in Sellersville. So we'd have our own employees there, and these employees would be managing the product. The only big differences between this and what we do at Durstein's is that in the cold storage business, we don't own that inventory. Someone else is paying us to put product there. So maybe Nestle would put product there, or Tyson would put chicken there, or Breyers would put ice cream there. Those are the types of products that we could put into a cold storage freezer. In the wholesale distribution business, like our existing food business, we're turning inventory every day. In a cold storage business, it's more common for the inventory to sit for longer periods of time. Similar to what they did at Rosemary's Cold Storage in Hatfield, which is
right. I was just going to ask that if that was a similar.
Yeah, it's a similar.
Is there any others in the area?
We have Americold down in Hatfield. That one's pretty close with the old Rosenberger building. There's a number of them in Allentown. There's a number in Philadelphia. There's a number in South Jersey.
And what are you doing for the USDA?
Well, when you guys probably read in the newspapers all the bottlenecks at the port, so they asked me if I could handle the importing. So when sometimes we'll have containers come from the Port of Philadelphia. We unload the containers. They're all loaded on the floor of the containers. We de-van them, palletize that product, bring it into the dock, temperature controlled. The USDA inspector, currently at our facilities on site, they'll randomly pick cases they want off of those products, off of those pallets. And we'll have to thaw that. It's usually meat. We'll thaw the meat out, and then we put it through a bandsaw to cut it. And the inspector will inspect it. If he finds it safe for food consumption, we'll have to destroy the product that was tested. And the remaining cases have to be stamped with a USDA stamp number, we're number 135. And then we'll shrink wrap those pallets and put them into cold storage or ship them back out. around the country.
So the traffic is not going to be your own vehicles in this.
Right. No, there's none of my vehicles. We won't have any trucks. We're not, at this point, there's no plan to have our own trucks for this facility.
Gotcha. And it's all 18-wheeler reefers.
Most likely, that's what I would assume, the all 18-wheelers.
Any idea on traffic?
It's hard to know because I don't know how much inventory, how often the inventory is going to turn. It depends on what the customers want to put here and how long they want to keep it here.
Right.
They might want to keep it for a long time. They might want to turn it off, and I don't know. I'm planning on doing frozen as opposed to a lot of refrigerated. So the frozen usually sits longer than produce does, for example. I don't have an answer to that, but I hired Bowler to help me with this. They're on the call too, and they've done some traffic studies.
We have TPD on the call in a bit to go over, give you an overview. I will mention on traffic and it's larger and what we'll go through this in a little more detail, but larger facilities and different kinds of facilities would absolutely have more traffic, more truck traffic. So not that, it's, as we said, it's an industrial zoned, land. It's, the board made a determination that something planned industrial should go there. And, there are degrees, right? Amazon would have far more truck traffic than the Durstein use. Just to preview that a little bit before we turn it over to Eric.
All right. Any other questions for Zach from Planning Commission members or Steve?
Just Andy, just one. So this is 120 feet, 9 stories almost. Do we in the county, do we have other buildings that are this high? Do any come to mind?
I spoke with the fire department, and I thought he told me that they had buildings that were around 100 locally, around 100 feet locally. I could ask him for which they were. I want to say Grandview Hospital's new project was around 100.
And Mike Geithner from Bowler might be able to shed some more light on that as well.
Yeah, just looking for a reference, something I can drive by and.
Yeah, I've got you. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe we can give you one. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think maybe good time for me to maybe jump in.
There we go, Mike. Great, thanks.
Sure. Mike Geithner with Bowler Engineering. So in regards to building heights, I unfortunately don't have a specific answer on the county, but we can have that and we can look into that obviously as things progress and prior to us appearing even before the board and moreover the zoning hearing board. I will say that Zach mentioned, the height, the necessity of it from an automation standpoint. The other aspect here is that we're going taller and not wider. So the overall building with the full build out is around 297,000 square feet. Phase 1 will be around 95,000 square feet. That's the white portion you see on the plan. If you are familiar with this site, obviously it's undeveloped. The overall lot is a little bit shy of 40 acres. When you consider the environmental constraints that are on this site, woodlands, wetlands, floodplain, steep slopes, those are all contained within this property. So when you take those areas out, and your ordinance is very specific when it comes to the resource protection area, and I'm here to say that our plan here, where our access is located, where the building is located, we're not disturbing floodplains, we're not disturbing wetlands within those areas. And when you take those natural resource areas out, our remaining lot area is around 22 acres. So we're a little bit above half of what the total lot can permit. So there's obviously some constraints within the property. But even with that, even with the full build out of the almost 300,000 square foot facility, we are fully compliant with coverages, impervious, setbacks, and all zoning criteria outside of obviously the building height. So it asked the planning commission to consider that. And we're talking about, parking, impervious coverage, and things of that nature. It would appear when you look at this facility, because of the height, that it seems like it's a significant building and significant coverage area. And we actually fully comply with the ordinance. And in most cases, we're well in excess. And when I say well in excess, specifically from Cat Hill Road, your ordinance requires that the front yard setback is 50 feet. And again, we are in the PI, Planned Industrial Zoning District. The use is a G3 use, which is permitted within that zoning district. The front yard setback of 50 feet, we're almost 400 feet from the road to the closest portion of the building. And the closest portion of the building is that lower elevation that you see in the picture that's on the screen here. So when we start talking about the larger portion of the tallest portion of the building, we're talking probably 450 feet from Cat Hill Road. So we are set back significantly from the road, well in excess of what the ordinance permits within that area. The dock areas, usually when you see an industrial development here, we're talking about, hundreds of docks on both sides of the building and storage areas. With phase one, we're only talking about 10 dock locations. Phase two would add another 24, so only 34 total docks for this 300,000 square foot building. And then the trailer spaces would be 10 in phase one and another 30 in phase, the full bed out phases. So that's just another 40. So when you talk about dock and trailer spaces, 74 total. So we're not talking about a significant, truck court area here that you would see with a typical distribution facility of this size. So something, again, just to kind of give you an idea that this is not your straightforward warehouse distribution. I'm going to hand it over momentarily to Eric to kind of speak to the significant traffic differences, so you can have an idea of what's going on with that aspect. The parking, the vehicular parking, where the employees are going to be. We have the main parking area at the front of the building, and then we have a secondary parking area. Total parking on the site would be 80 on one side, 78 on the other one, so about 158 total vehicular parking spaces. And again, as Zach indicated, that may be reduced depending on their operation, but the 158 fall well within what your ordinance would require for this facility. So I kind of give you some flavor. Obviously, we're not in full land development mode here, but to give you some sense of, the site constraints that are on the property, we're able to work around those. I mean, not disturb floodplains or wetlands, and still propose a use that is permitted use that falls within all the zoning aspects of your ordinance. So maybe Eric.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Mike. And yeah, and Mike was just, I sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but if the board has, the commission, I'm sorry, has any questions for Mike, we can, happy to have him answer them now, but we could go then to Eric for a little bit of a traffic preview and analysis if we can. It's up to the board, obviously. Do you want to move on, you think? Okay, so maybe Eric, you want to
Absolutely.
jump in? Yeah, great, thanks.
Good evening, all. As indicated, I'm Eric Mounts with Traffic Planning Design. We are handling the transportation planning for the development, similar to what Mike Zeigner had indicated. Obviously, very preliminary in the project, have not engaged in any detailed traffic studies for the site up to this point, but we do acknowledge, based on township ordinance requirements, there will be a requirement at the township level for a traffic study, as well as Cat Hill Road being a PennDOT owned roadway. There will be PennDOT involvement in the project as well. So there will be multiple layers of review with respect to traffic for the project. As was touched on, the traffic generation for warehouse type uses are typically a hot button topic with respect to the amount of additional traffic to be added to the roadways. And as Mike touched on earlier, there are varying levels of that. We in the transportation industry rely heavily on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which is the standard for estimating traffic for various types of development, inclusive of warehouse. That ITE manual breaks down warehouse traffic generation into a few different categories, which fall into varying levels of intensity. As was touched on, your fulfillment center type use is obviously highest intensity, your Amazons of the world. From there's other various types of warehouse uses. There are your various short-term storage facilities, which are more of your day-to-day products that get ordered and are shipped out, but not quite to the level of an Amazon. And then as you head down through the hierarchy, there is specific data in that manual for cold storage facilities. And it is, in the context of traffic generation, definitely on the lower end of anticipated traffic generation for these type of warehouse facilities. To give you an order of magnitude, and we'll be working with the project team here and to hone in on particular details for this site and trying to make sure we are representing trip generation as accurately as possible. But if you just look at the data in the ITE manual for cold storage facilities, just to give you an order of magnitude, for the phase one of the building, which Mike had described as that white area being approximately 95,000 square feet, you'd be looking at, for a course of a 24-hour period for a day, about 201 trips coming to and from that site. So that's your total inbound and outbound, about 200 trips over the course of the day. And when you break that down into what we typically look at for traffic studies, we look at the single peak hour of the morning commuter peak and the PM commuter peak. You're looking at about 10 to 11 peak hour trips for that initial phase for this type of facility. So relatively low traffic generating. Looking at the overall development for the potential full build out, that does jump up to approximately 600 daily trips. But you are still looking at your AM and PM peak periods. You're looking in the range of about 30 to 35 trips, again, to and from the site in total in those hours. So relatively low traffic generator in the scheme of things in an industrial zoning district. So we acknowledge that obviously there is planning to occur here. We will have to address truck traffic. Anticipated routes to and from the facility, and intend to do so in working with municipality and PennDOT. But in the scheme of things, with some of the uses in the industrial zone, I would say this definitely is a good use as it relates to a relatively low intensity traffic use.
What's the hours of operation planned? We're gonna have trucks throughout the evening, throughout the night?
I don't know yet. It's easier to find labor to load and unload trucks from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. That'd be the ideal, but there'd be potential for 24 hours. However, to start, we're hoping it would just be 7 to 4. I can't guarantee that, but that's what we're working towards.
What's the road distance from your facility to get out to Route 309?
From Cat Hill Road?
The full distance from your driveway to 309.
Probably 2 miles, maybe 3.
Yeah, I'm trying to ballpark it for you.
How many turns do you think it'll take to do that?
So the anticipated truck route to get to Route 309, you would have the anticipated route, which seems to be the most direct route, best roadway conditions to go to and from. So it would be Cat Hill Road to Quarry Road out to State Road. That overall, just to give you a general order of magnitude, it's approximately 2 miles for that route from the 309 interchange to the Cat Hill Road entrance.
And do you know how many private residences you'll pass along the way?
I do not have a specific number.
Okay.
Any other questions? Are you planning on presenting at the supervisors meeting next week?
Yes, the 19th, right?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah, that's the one Greg invited us to.
It should be the 20th.
The 20th.
Thanks, Greg. That's what I meant. 20th, Wednesday.
Correct, Wednesday. Thanks. Oops.
All right. All right. Is there anything else you want to present or any other questions?
Oh, I think.
Any other questions?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm getting feedback here. I'm not hearing everything that's being said. Is there more that you want to present, or are there any more questions from the planning commission members?
Well, we do have folks from ESI here. If you want to hear a little more about the technology, or we get questions about the technology, they're here to answer that. Those types of questions for you or the public. It's not essential. I mean, if you think you've got a flavor for what we're proposing, then we certainly don't want to take up more of the commission time than we need to. And happy to answer questions from the public, which I'm sure there's some people who want to speak on it. So
yeah, I think I've heard enough for tonight. Unless anybody else wants to hear the ESI group speak.
This is Tim. I'm good.
Andy, I'm okay.
John, I don't have any other questions.
All right. Well, why don't we open it up to public comment and question? Greg, do we have anyone?
Yes, we have one. I will read it. It's John Romeo. One more comment. A variance is for when you need a few percentages over the impervious surface or a couple feet higher for a barn, etc. It's not for 100 plus over the allowed height. There is nothing else around like it. It will ruin the landscape in the area. Take that project to a more suitable location, spend the money on real estate, not changing our zoning and the setbacks, Route 309, right-of-way, property lines, road frontage setbacks, overhead transmission lines, right-of-way. I also do not want to hear truck tractors 24/7. This is a quiet area day and night. That's the only email we received.
All right. I see Jeff Nolan raise his hand. Jeff, you want to join the group here?
Yes, thank you, everybody. Jeff Nolan, 3000 Clymer Avenue, Telford, PA. Just a few items that I'll be very interested in hearing about or questions I'll have will be what sort of light pollution we'll be having from this setup, stormwater maintenance, road width, and obviously traffic of the trucks. I know that was discussed, but I think I'm the only resident that actually has property line that borders this project initiative. I would be on the back end. So the back of my property comes up to the back of this proposed building site. I definitely would like more information of how far the back of the building and any sort of construction and parking will be to my property line. I will be interested on how stormwater is going to be maintained. My property line does come across the stream and is in the floodplain, so I'd be very curious as to what the studies are and how we're going to be maintaining stormwater based off this facility, and obviously if it's 24/7. So the last thing I want to say is I was never contacted about this project, not once. I got a letter in the mail today for the zoning hearing board that takes place on August 3rd. I'm really disappointed, especially in a local company, that they did not reach out, especially to the one resident that this probably affects the most. So with that said, thank you for the time.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Cliff Cole, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you. I'm Cliff Cole, 2440 Shoecraft Road. Where do I start? 9 stories, that's huge. This does not fit. I do not believe that the township should give a variance on this in any way. That's not anywhere close. I understand, it's a business, and you have a business in Sellersville. Please go build it in a more appropriate area. This is yes, we are zoned industrial. You made it a real good point that you're within all the other zoning variances and everything, yet except for this, incredible height. But you say 200 trucks, but it really could be 600 trucks. That would be that would be a truck every 2.4 minutes. So, they want to do 24/7. They're very cagey about answering that. Oh, well, phase 1, we'll only do it, during the daylight hours. But, it's money's money. Once you've built this thing, you want to maximize your profit. I understand that. But this is not in our, I don't see where putting a 9-story cold storage warehouse was in our comprehensive plan. I just don't see where that fits. And I also should be mentioned that there's a zoning meeting on August 3rd at 7:00 at Tylersport, and so anybody from the public should plan to be there. I believe that this is the topic. Maybe you can answer that for sure. Anyways, if there's a question I have is, do any of you gentlemen that want to build this thing, do you actually live next to one of these monsters? I bet you don't. And, would you want to live next to something like this? We don't want this in our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Kratz has your hand raised.
Good evening. This is Amy and Steve Kratz, 3270 Meeting House Road. We've been involved with the discussion about the Various Partners project, which is a project that is directly behind our home. And we understand in this presentation that there were some distinctions made of this proposal between more of a warehouse type facility and the amount of traffic that would generate, and versus this cold storage facility. And we understand and appreciate the differences that the proposal made in trying to make people understand that those two would be different. With both proposals, one concern that we, and I'm sure fellow neighbors have, is this idea of increased traffic, especially one associated with a potential 24/7 business. We're battling this with the Various project, but there's also the included challenges of screening and buffering an operation of this size from neighboring residential properties, the ones that are on Cat Hill Road. And those are also potential concerns with this proposal too. So we would like to encourage the Planning Commission and the applicant to consider what neighbor-friendly business means to the township and to apply that definition to future discussions of this proposal.
Are you done? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Jeff Nolan, your hand is up again.
Yeah, sorry, just one last thing, because the only thing I didn't mention was the height of the building, and I own 16.5 acres, like I said, that backs up to this property, which was supposed to be a nice natural scenery for me to retire in. The thought of sitting on the back deck and seeing a 120-foot building instead of the beautiful sycamore trees that line the stream right now is, I just can't imagine us approving this variance as well. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do have one email comment that has come in.
Okay.
Monica Riley, 917 Cat Hill Road. Apparently, this traffic is being directed right past my property, which is very close to this warehouse. Not happy. Too much traffic already.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. All right. Any other questions or comments from the planning commission?
John,
Hearing
online comment.
none, I would say we're probably good to go with you guys for tonight. We'll see you next week at the supervisors board meeting. Which means I won't give a very lengthy report knowing you're going to be there, which is nice. So yeah, we'll see you there, and thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Have a good night. All right. Next on the agenda was supposed to be Variance, so they pulled out for tonight. So we're going to go into old business. Before we do that, Mary Everly was going to join us tonight, and I think that I saw she was on. Mary, are you with us?
I am.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fabulous. So I asked you to come on, well, for last month. We've been having, continued discussion, obviously, about denial of large plans that people don't want in the township, granting waivers, and what was the other one? Oh, minimum lot size in the township. And I was hoping that you'd be able to just enlighten us on give your insights on these topics. Obviously, with these three warehouses and the Wawa coming at us, people don't want them and are wishing that we would not allow it. And it's hard to deny these plans as long as they fall within the zoning requirements. But it's also hard to convince people of that. So I was hoping you could start with that topic.
Well, if I start with that topic, yeah, you're required by Pennsylvania law to provide for, what's that, Greg? Do we need that there? No?
I just put the agenda up so everyone can see the agenda.
Okay.
Would you like it?
No, it's all right. Doesn't matter. So Pennsylvania law, especially Pennsylvania case law, requires that you provide for every legitimate use of property somewhere in the township. There are legitimate uses of property that are very popular with people, and there's legitimate uses of property that are not. It's your obligation to provide for every legitimate use of property. If you don't, then your ordinance is exclusionary. So the first question that people who are not real familiar with this process ask, and that's not anybody on the planning commission at this point, but for any residents who may want to know, yeah, you have to provide for every legitimate use of property, from adult bookstores to warehouses. It's the law, and mobile home parks, things that maybe people don't like or want to live next to, but you have to provide for them. And once you provide for them, and you do that to make sure your ordinance isn't exclusionary, because understand, if your ordinance is exclusionary, any developer can file a curative amendment against the ordinance and put the use someplace where you may really not want to have it. So that's the whole concept behind zoning. Once you have an ordinance in your zoning ordinance, and you have a subdivision and land development ordinance that has regulations that have been thought out and drafted and adopted, approving a land development plan, approving a use like this isn't a legislative matter. So there's two ways that municipalities function, or boards of supervisors function. One's in legislative capacity and the other in adjudicative capacity. Legislative is when you're writing the zoning ordinance and you're trying to decide which part of the township should be zoned for this and which part of the township should be zoned for that. Those are discretionary items. There's no standard. There's nobody to look over their shoulder telling the board of supervisors how they're supposed to zone the property, other than that they must include every legitimate use. Adjudicative capacity is how you review land developments. You have a specific set of requirements, and if the applicant demonstrates compliance with your zoning ordinance requirements and your subdivision and land development ordinance requirements, then they are entitled to construct the use. Do I think that answers the first question?
Mary, Mary,
Uh, John, was that you?
Yeah, Mary, this is John Swartuck. One of the issues
John.
that I think where we run into the slippery slope, and I think we hit it pretty hard on the applicant that wasn't on the call tonight, is that somebody wants to develop versus, right. So they want to develop a project. So it feels to me that they back into it. They design their project to make the maximum use of the space. In their case, a warehouse. The bigger the warehouse, the bigger the profit margin. And then they go back and they compare what they have versus the ordinance, and they put together a laundry list of variance requests. And they bring that to the planning commission to approve. And I think what's become apparent to a couple of us here, particularly in the Variance project, is if the developer came with a proposal that went strictly by the ordinance with no variance request.
John, I just want to make sure you're talking about variances and not waivers, correct?
I'm sorry, waivers.
All right,
Waiver.
waivers and variances are distinctly different.
Yeah, my mistake. I'm sorry. I meant waiver. They come through with their
Sure.
waiver request, and as a result, if they built without any waivers, their project would be X number of square feet, but they design it to be X times 2 square feet to maximize the profit. And the bigger the warehouse, the more traffic, the more impact to the community. And it just gets bigger and bigger. And the cold storage facility is another, they're asking for a zoning waiver for 120 square feet. I'm sorry, 120 vertical feet. My guess is if that was denied, they would probably find that the project's not cost effective for the site, and they would look someplace else.
So what are the biggest waivers they're asking for?
I don't have the list in front of me right now.
The afforestation is a big one, or reforestation. They've made no effort to comply with the ordinance. The other one is parking lot shading, which that one I understand. And the other is the slopes, slope grade on the basins.
The conflict arises because the zoning was put in place long after residents moved into the areas. So a lot of the folks that are on the call tonight, they got lumped into an industrial zone long after they lived there through no fault of their own. And there was a person made a comment before about coexisting with the neighbors. And I think that's an important piece that we need to find out how to take into consideration when we approve these. If this cold storage facility was in an industrial park right off of 309, I don't know that anybody would have an issue with it. But the fact that it's 2 miles off a country road passing, you know, 2 dozen residences who happen to be in this area that's zoned industrial. I don't think that either the letter or the spirit of the law is meant to chase away the existing residents because the community that they grew up in doesn't exist anymore.
Well, John, couple quick things. The project you listened to tonight, Durstein Foods, that's very, very different because their variances as opposed to their waivers, I don't even know what waivers they're asking for, are significant. The variances are significant, and variance standard is very different than waiver standard, which is why I was drawing the distinction. The variance standard, you're only entitled to a variance if you can show that there is a hardship that's unique and peculiar to your property, which deprives you of the reasonable use of your property. If you can make a reasonable use of your property within the confines of the zoning ordinance, you're not entitled to a variance. Now, zoning hearing boards grant variances for people who want to put an addition on their house or a garage or an extra bay on their garage all the time. And maybe they can't demonstrate a hardship. That just happens. But, you know, to get a variance in something like the Durstein Food situation is a lot more difficult. It's a lot heavier of a lift. A waiver is when a saldo provision just doesn't fit in this case. It just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't, it's not because the applicant doesn't want to do it. It's because the application of that particular provision of the subdivision and land development ordinance, it would either bear an undue burden or just wouldn't work. Like, I think every township I go to, every project asks for a waiver from the requirement that they show all significant features within 500 feet of the property. And every township grants that waiver and allows like the submission of an aerial photo instead. That's like so common that I think saldos should be amended to get rid of that provision and provide for it. And sometimes if the engineer wants that information for MS4 requirements, that's good, and that's important. But that's the kind of thing that you waive. Or, you know, if you have a business that's existing and they want to add on to their business, but, you know, they would have to put some parking in, does that mean that the whole parking lot has to be reconfigured to have planting aisles and shade trees? Probably not. That probably is the kind of thing that most planning commissions would say, yeah, this isn't. But when somebody's asking for waivers so that they can build at an intensity that was never anticipated by the drafters of the ordinance, that's when it's okay to deny a waiver.
That's very helpful to me. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
Chris,
yeah,
you mentioned something else and I can't remember right now about.
I'm still thinking about waivers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking about waivers too. That's what I meant. I think you mentioned something else having to do with waivers. And I know that the question comes up all the time. Well, if we granted this waiver here, do we have to grant that waiver every time? I would say that if you grant the waiver every time, then you'd have to have a pretty darn good reason for not granting it.
Right.
But I don't see you guys going hog wild with waiver granting. I don't see that so much. I know, like, if you have a small residential development on a country road with no curbs and sidewalks, you'll waive curbs and sidewalks. What that makes sense because it's in keeping with the community. I don't see a lot of waiving of replacement trees. Greg, am I wrong about that? Steve, where's Steve? Where did Steve disappear to?
I'm still here, Mary. We have, well, parking area trees we have waived because our requirement is fairly strict, and in a commercial lot sometimes it's hard. There's not enough if you're trying to get truck traffic around a parking lot, sometimes it's hard to put in planting islands to put trees in. So parking area trees, we've done partial waivers of. We don't waive them. We have never waived them anything totally.
Yeah,
The
so there's a
reforestation
distinction
section,
too.
we did it once. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
know
certainly
we've
don't have
done,
to continue to do it because you did it once, but there's a distinction there too. Like if a property is zoned for like a retail business, and somebody wants to put a retail business in, and it's a modest sized retail business, it meets the minimum lot size of the zoning district, and you can't get truck circulation if you have planting aisles with everything in it, well, then that makes sense to grant that waiver. That doesn't mean that you must grant it so that someone can maximize the size of their building and they need it to get that many parking spaces in. Those are two different concepts. And if you've only ever waived tree replacements a couple of times, no, you don't. I don't see a lot of people waiving tree replacements, and I
So
you need to worry about that.
this is Tim speaking, Mary.
Hello,
So like, the reforestation issue, if there's a 20% requirement, they're proposing 4% or 4.5, whatever it is. I mean, it's a 15% reduction. I mean, in that case, why would it be that we would grant that waiver? Because they want to make the building as big as they possibly can.
What is Steve, what is the requirement? Is 40%? What did he say?
20%, I think, right, Steve?
20, I believe, in that district.
They're coming back with 4.4% or something like that. So that's a 15.5% deficit in reforestation. I mean, it's fairly significant.
I know this is an art and not a science. So if you have somebody, like some municipalities have like 80% across the board. It's 80% preservation of trees, 80% reforestation requirement. And so now, like, you can't take more than 20% of the trees down, and you put yourself in a situation where it's really, really hard to put any kind of a particular use. I'm going to just continue to use warehouse because that's what we're talking about now, but this is a more general conversation than that. Like, you can't put any warehouse on even a large property if it's completely wooded. And so in that case, maybe that's something to look at. But if you're a 20% replacement is that 20% disturbance or replacement, Steve?
Well, we have both requirements, but in this case, it's the afforestation. It's requiring you to create 20% wooded area on your lot.
Yeah, and then a lot of times
they're saying they only have 4% currently, and they don't want to add anything.
Yeah, you can deny that waiver.
That's where we're saying, and it's at that point, the reduction in the building size would eliminate the need for, in this particular applicant's case, the reduction in building size would pretty much negate, maybe not all of them, but significantly reduce the number of waivers that they're requesting if they were just to reduce the size of the building.
Simple greed doesn't make a provision unreasonable.
Right. Well, that's what I was wondering too. But you had said about the severity, like with the variances versus the waivers, you're talking about severity, like how much, so if you're a couple feet here, a couple feet there versus, 100 feet, like in height in the variance issue, like in the waiver, does that still apply with regard to like, the largesse, let's say, of the waiver request?
Yes. That's yes is far too simple of an answer, but generally, yes.
I mean, in theory, that would hold water, right?
Right. Right. If the applicant is able to comply and still locate that use type on the property, and they choose not to because they want, like, unless it's really, really egregious what the requirement that the municipality is looking for on a regular piece of property, not a severely environmentally impacted piece of property, but on it, like just like your normal run-of-the-mill piece of property, then no, they don't get to, like, you don't have to grant a waiver so that they can have the biggest building they can possibly have. That's not part of the deal, no matter what
Yeah.
you granted waivers for before.
It's not our job to make them have the biggest potential building they possibly could have by granting waivers, right?
Correct,
They need to fall within our ordinances.
correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. That was very helpful.
All right, any other questions on waivers and variances? The other issue we've been discussing is the minimum lot size, specifically in the RC at 1.8.
Yeah, I'd like to, let's talk about that in executive session. It's not, like, that's a more sensitive legal discussion, and I would rather just do that with the planning commission, Greg and Steve.
Okay,
Is that all right? You have said you had a couple things that you wanted to do, and then maybe we can just reconvene in executive session. Greg loved when I do that.
well, I mean, the next thing in old business is basically that discussion. So, I mean, if we can do that after adjournment, have an executive session, is that what
We
you're
sure
suggesting?
can.
Okay.
Because it's not truly an executive session. Anytime you're getting legal advice, there's no requirement that that be done publicly.
Okay.
There's all the attorney, the Sunshine Act does not trump the attorney-client privilege.
Okay. Well, if you are up for that and the planning commission members are up for that, I certainly am. I do see Cliff has his hand raised before we move forward. So that being said, do we want to just table old business and discuss it in executive session? We will go through new business and public comment, adjourn, and then go into executive session. Is that how it works?
That would be how it works.
Chris, this is John. With
Yeah.
that subject being as important as it is it okay if we wait for next month when Alex is back?
That would be up to Mary.
I'm not going to be, I'm out of town. Yeah, I have a conflict on the second Tuesday anyway. So I'll be happy to talk to Alex at his convenience whenever he wants to talk to me. But I don't want to jilt a longstanding commitment 2 months in a row.
Okay.
Can we record the executive session to forward to Alex?
No.
Okay.
Could we just convene an executive session at some other time between now and say next month's meeting when Alex is back?
Sure, we can do that. I'm also happy to talk to Alex. I'm not trying to exclude Alex. I like Alex. He does a good job.
Yeah, he does. And it'd be nice to have him.
I was just saying, could we do like an afternoon sometime? Like if you're already there, like just figure out a time and get together at the township building or something, or on a Zoom, whatever. But care.
Yeah, we can do it, I don't know how many guys are around like next Wednesday for the supervisors meeting. We could do it before the supervisors meeting. Oh, Greg's gonna kill me now, right?
I'm not good for next Wednesday.
I'll be writing my report.
Me too, Chris.
Well, I mean, we can, just throw around dates and see what works for everybody. I'm typically available most evenings. But
Yeah, I'm usually available, after late afternoons, evenings.
Yeah, I'm almost never available in the evening. So,
what's the latest you can meet?
me?
Yeah.
It depends on which meeting it is. So. Like, when will we be thinking about? Like next week? Next week's a bad week.
When's Alex back?
Yeah, we should probably incorporate that.
Yeah, or we could just do it now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know when he's back.
Yeah, either way, if you want to do it now, that's fine.
Well,
I
somebody
could
take,
do it Monday, the 25th at around 4.
oh, Lord. What's today?
That works for me.
We don't know if it works for Alex, though.
Right. That's the problem.
The whole point is to find a day when he can make it.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's kind of silly for us to try and make a date now.
Yeah. Why don't we wait till he gets back and we'll.
Well, the
Get together.
25th works for me, so maybe we can, when Alex gets back, ask him about the 25th as a starting point.
Right.
Yeah, I can make that work.
This is Andy. It's good for me too.
Okay.
And, right. And then we can try some other, like the 27th might also be okay in late afternoon, subject to Greg's availability. I don't know when you're going to be away, Greg, but I can do a Zoom meeting without you. You don't have to be part of it. I can get email addresses and just invite everyone.
25th, I'm visiting a college.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And that's up to you if you want to be part of it. If I've already told you my answer to this question, so it's not like you need to be there. So if you can't be there, we can just give you a break and I can just set up a Zoom meeting with the planning commission members without you.
Okay. That's fine by me.
I thought you'd be okay with.
All right. Well, let's pencil that in and see what Alex's input is, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Chris, will you be talking to Alex then?
As soon as I figure out how and when I can talk to Alex, I will let him know. Yeah,
All right, then let me know.
I will.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Thank you, Mary. Really appreciate your input.
Yes, thanks, Mary. Have a good evening.
I have a
Certainly.
question for Mary, if that's possible before you leave, or no?
Oh, you can ask me a question. It depends on the nature of the question whether I'm going to answer it or not. So
Is that okay with the rest of the group?
Yes, go ahead, Cliff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary, we really appreciate you joining this discussion, and it was extremely helpful, the information you gave. Would you be able to easily explain I mean, I know you were trying to do that, but you didn't directly, but can you explain what the difference between a variance and a waiver is?
Sure. A variance is doing something different than the zoning ordinance requires, and a waiver is doing something different than the subdivision and land development ordinance requires. The variance requires a trip to the zoning hearing board and has a very strict standard that's set forth in the municipality's planning code. The other is a very general standard that you'll find in the beginning of I think it's the requirements section of your subdivision and land development ordinance, like when the applicant demonstrates need, I think is something close to what most subdivision and land development ordinances say as a standard, but it's a very loosey-goosey kind of standard where the variance standard is very tight.
And where does something like time of operation fall in? Is that that's not really a zoning thing? Is the time of operation, and is in a industrial zone? Are there limitations that a township can put on that? You know, like for instance, we have in our township, we have a mining company. Well, they set off dynamite and stuff like that. They don't do that at night. In fact, I don't even think they operate the mine until a certain hour of the day. So why is it okay for truck traffic to be in there at, what law allows them to have a truck every 2.4 minutes?
Who's them?
The
quarry?
last ones, the ones we were just talking about. I think both of these warehouses want to have a significant amount of truck traffic, and they both are talking about 24/7 operation.
Yeah, that's governed. We have noise requirements in our zoning ordinance that people have to live by. I don't think there's hours of operation for different uses in the zoning ordinance. Greg, Steve, if I'm wrong, say that. I don't remember seeing different hours of operation. And
There is
mostly,
not.
so with the, first of all, the governing would be custom in the industry. So a quarry is a different kind of industry that generally does not operate at night. You know, you have to bring the trucks in and somebody's got to like make sure that they get filled, and the light pollution and things like that would create violations of the ordinance. A warehouse custom in the industry would be like more hours of operation. I'm not saying overnight hours of operation, but you're saying like, is that something we can ask the applicant for?
Well, they would have light pollution issues too with that, wouldn't they? Or and perhaps noise.
Loading trucks necessarily like in the big open space that a quarry is loading its trucks. So let me just finish this thought, because thoughts fleet away from me very, very quickly. But when you're talking about negotiating for hours of operations or imposing hours of operations on a use, the courts call that the dance that townships and developers do during the land development process. And it's implied that there's a certain amount of give and take. Okay, like we'll talk about this variance if you talk about this, and it's a negotiation to a certain point. Like, yeah, we can live with this percentage of replacement trees if you can give us hours of operation instead of that. The courts, like, there's limits to how much of a dance you can do, but the courts do acknowledge that there is a dance that's done.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And I just can't help it because you use this as an example in when you were talking about it, but how would a municipality stop something like an adult didn't want that? You know, you use that as an example, but
Did he win the prize? Did he win the prize? Why did it beep like that? All right.
oh, somebody else probably is looking to do a comment, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't stop an adult bookstore. You can zone adult bookstores, and I think, zone them in. Like we try and zone them as well as we can. But if somebody wants to have an adult bookstore, you can't prohibit them on a township-wide basis.
And so pretty much if somebody wants to build a warehouse, as long as they're building within the industrial zoning variance, if I'm saying that right, within the zoning.
In the zoning district, and they meet the ordinances, then you have to allow it.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Mary to John, I'll ask Cliff's question a different way. Would it be permissible to write into the ordinance that in these industrial and commercial areas, in acknowledgement of the fact that there are residents there that have been there for a long time, that hours of operation would be restricted if a facility was within a certain number of feet of an existing residence?
Yeah, I've seen provisions like that in zoning ordinances. Like I was just working with the zoning ordinance yesterday where the provision was that you couldn't do any facility with animal testing within 200 feet of a residential building. So those kind of things, like acknowledging that there may be a budding residential. Now, if you have residential uses in an industrial district that are older, yeah, that's a little bit more difficult. But if it's, abutting a residential zone, then you just have to be careful with that one, John. Yeah, it can be done, but yeah, it has to be done gently and surgically so that you don't wind up prohibiting the very use that you're on the surface permitting.
Yeah, my thinking behind this was that, again, for the residents that have been there a long period of time, that if we had some clause that would restrict, that would protect the residents that are already there, but not overly burden the businesses such that the clause would expire once the property was sold. So if,
Oh, no, no, that would be, that's, I'm sorry, I'm really frank. That would be a terrible idea, John, and here's why. So if you live in the industrial district and you get that protection, how are you ever going to sell your property? We just made your property valueless because, okay, I get this protection, but when I sell it to the next person, he doesn't get the protection. So it reduces the value of the property to instantly. And that's even less fair.
well, but that's what we're doing to all these residents now is that, you know, the fellow that says he has a property that butts up against this empty field, then if somebody comes in and builds a 24/7 warehouse, his property value sinks. So it's the same either way. His property value goes down whether that clause is in there or not. The clause protects him while he's there, but it doesn't protect the next owner, versus he gets no protection at all.
Yeah, I'm not trying to offer no protection, but that'll be a long time. This property's been zoned industrial for a pretty long time, haven't they? Or am I wrong about that? Like, in that end of the township, I can't remember. I mean, with the quarries there and Drager there, and I think I can't remember when that wasn't an industrial zone.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the 90 ordinance. I think it goes back to the 90 ordinance, if not longer than that.
And I'm not saying, oh, the heck with that person, not in any way, shape, or form. I'm just, you know, what you try and do in those cases, and I'm not articulating it well, is that's part of that dance. And every developer that I've ever worked with is cognizant of the need to do that dance, especially with the property owners. And the property owners, you know, have their, like, put a big berm up against this side of the property. And your answer to that is going to be, well, you can't put up a big berm big enough to cover a 9-story building. And I can't argue about that.
Okay, I see Hal Shermer's on and has raised his hand.
I just wanted to chime in. I remember hearing from Bill Barnes that the industrial district was a way of hedging bets back when they were not sure where 309 was going to put the interchange. They knew it was either going to be Cat Hill or it was going to be on Church Road, so they just made the entire stretch industrial because they weren't sure which one was going to get the exit. In some 1960s
That's a really long
plan.
time ago. Yeah, thanks, Hal.
It
That
took a
was
while
really
before it was
long time
actually
ago.
changed, but that was the thinking, is we don't know which ones have the exit, so we'll just pick one in between. That'll have to work out.
Now that we know, can we change it back?
Tony, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's hard in the same sentence when a developer comes in and says that they want to be neighbor friendly when they want to run 24 hours, 7 day a week. And there are, with the cold storage facility, there's probably about 24 or 25 homes that truck route goes through. And I'm not against business by no means, but I like what John presented. I don't know how to get that, how to make something of that idea work. But just as much as that a business has the right to conduct business, the resident also has the right to enjoy their property. I just don't know where middle ground is on that. But somehow or another it has to be looked into to protect both sides, if that makes sense.
Well, Tony, So the zoning hearing board is allowed to impose conditions on the grant of a relief as long as they're reasonable and related to the relief that was granted. So if you're talking about, you know, if a zoning hearing board would grant relief for a warehouse that was greatly bigger or greatly taller than the zoning ordinance provided, and a condition on the hours of operation wouldn't, in my opinion, be unreasonable.
Right, and that would only come from a variance, but on the warehouse, it's a permitted use all the way around. Really, they could come in, accept the waivers, and they would never be restricted by hours of operation, correct?
I don't want to speak to that because I don't know what kind of waivers they're asking for. I heard parking lot landscaping and tree replacement. Steve, is tree replacement saldo or zoning? I forget already.
This provision is salvo.
All right, so yeah, so I don't know what others he's asking for, but you know, those are pretty big waivers.
So are you saying that if you traded waivers off, you could trade waivers off against hours of operation? Could that be?
What I said was there's a dance that's done in every one of these, and that dance allows some latitude in getting those kind of concessions from a developer.
Okay. Have we ever done that before?
All the time.
As far as hours of operation go, in a trade-off with a waiver.
I don't remember hours of operation, but I'm trying to think of quarry regulations. We litigated the quarry and we settled that with of operations being part of the litigation. I can't, off the top of my head, Tony, I can't specifically remember trading hours of operation for a waiver, but I know I've done it in other townships a bunch of times.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, why don't we move forward? Mary, I guess you're free to go.
All right, thanks, guys. It was nice seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
again.
Mary.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is old business. Do we just want to table this until we have this discussion with Mary?
I would think so.
I don't have any other issues.
All right.
All right.
Okay by me.
Real quick on old business. Have we heard anything on the battery project?
No, there has been nothing new.
Nothing. Okay.
Let me, I thought about that earlier this week. Let me check, see on PGM's website whether that's still listed as an active project or not.
Okay.
And I'll send an email out to everybody.
Okay, thanks,
Okay,
John.
thank you. All right, move on to new business. I have no new business. Anyone else?
None for me.
None.
No.
Oh, now Hal raises his hand. What's up, Hal?
Just realized that one thing which, with the combination of the freezer and the other storage place that we might have to worry about is everybody's GPS is going to want to take them all the way down Clymer Avenue to Meeting House to make the left turn with the freezer truck at the light. So if they're planning to make a left turn at Quarry across 152, their GPS is going to be telling them, no, you want to continue out Clymer, make a right on Meeting House, then turn left once you got a light. Just that had popped into my mind going, that's going to happen. You're going to end up with people trying to cut the corner and getting stuck. Not that we want to encourage it, but the people are going to do it once there's a light there. It's not going to make a difference to the people coming in loaded. They can make the right turn onto Quarry easy, but I think there's going to be a lot of temptation for them to catch the light at Meeting House if and when there's ever a light there.
Unless we wind up with 2 lights.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, if I may, Chris, there is the potential that there may be a traffic signal at Quarry Road if both of these warehouse projects, the triple net investments and the cold storage, are approved. But Greg and I have also had some discussions with just some operationally, the township could implement their own restrictions on truck traffic on certain roads. So, it may be a point where we have to sign Clymer Road that it's not permitted for tractor trailer traffic between Quarry and Meeting House to prevent that cut through traffic. But that's an operational thing that the township could work on if we get to that point.
How do tractor trailers do getting around off of, well, is that still Clymer, what, across the bridge on Cat Hill? Has that ever been an issue? It seems like
they get to the pharmaceutical place fine.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right. Was there anything in your pending, what do we call that letter?
I don't think so.
Pending approvals?
Too many old sketch plans and things now, getting long again. I think everybody else has an indefinite extension or some time out.
So the Slosher property sold, correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
So did their development plan go with the sale? I mean, is that still viable?
The plan approval generally stays with the land. What their arrangement was with the new buyer, I have no idea. I haven't really talked to Andy Slosser about it, so I don't know if their new buyer is interested in developing it or not. But theoretically, that if he sells them the plan and the rights to the plan, that goes with the land.
Right. Understood.
Yeah, it
All
did
right.
get auctioned.
So-
It did settle. I did check on it, and you can learn a little bit about what was sold based on the price.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. We're going to move on to public comment. Greg, do we have anyone?
We have no public comment.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, then I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Later.
See you later.